Carl June, Richard W. Vaugh, Professor in Immunotherapy, Perelman School of Medicine, University of Pennsylvania, United States, BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award in Biology and Biomedicine. Could you explain what CAR T cells are and how your basic research revealed their therapeutic potential to treat cancer?
Sure. In a nutshell, CAR T cells are a therapy for cancer that is made from your own immune system. Most is like a blood transfusion where we take cells from your blood and then in the laboratory we modify them with gene transfer technology so that then the cells are targeted against leukemia. And then the cells are given back into your body by a simple blood infusion where they now will kill and destroy cancer cells. They can last for years and years in the patient and stay on patrol.
How did you first become interested in this field, and what motivated you to carry out this research?
Well, I began training in leukemia in the 1980s, where at that point the best therapy was a bone marrow transplant. And that involved very high dose radiation and chemotherapy, and usually then the infusion of stem cells and T cells from a donor like your brother or sister. And that often worked, but it had a very severe side effect sometimes where the brother or sister's incoming cells would attack the patient and cause toxicity. So we worked in my lab for about 20 years to make the patient's own T cells, the patient that had leukemia, to engineer those into killer cells that could cure the leukemia and then not have to do the bone marrow transplant.
At the level of clinical applications, what has been demonstrated so far about the potential of these therapies to treat blood cancer, and how many patients have already benefited from them?
Well, we began this as an academic experiment at the University of Pennsylvania in 2012 and 2010, first in adults and then in children. And it got FDA approval by Novartis in 2017 in the US. And now, here in 2026, there are 7 different kinds of CAR cells approved for blood cancer in Europe and in the US. And about 50,000 patients have been treated to date.
To what extent has it been shown that CAR T cell therapies could also be effective against solid tumors? And when do you foresee that this could also benefit patients who suffer from lung, breast, colon, pancreatic, or brain cancer?
Well, this is the major area where our research is now focused. So solid cancers have not had the striking results to date that we've had with blood cancers. And we think we understand why that is. It's harder to get the CAR T cells into the solid tumors like pancreatic cancer and brain cancer. The good news is there's been lots of progress in the last 2 years in experimental trials around the world. And there are more than 1,000 trials now testing CAR cells in virtually all kinds of cancer. And I expect in the next 5 to 10 years that these CAR T cells will be used routinely for all the common solid cancers that you mentioned.
What has been demonstrated up to now about the potential of these therapies for autoimmune diseases, infectious diseases, and other disorders?
Yeah, well, we began this work with the CAR cells retraining the immune system to fight cancer. And over the last 2 years, it's turned out that the very same CAR cells that can work in leukemia are very effective in a number of autoimmune diseases where the body attacks its own tissues and can lead to problems like arthritis, diabetes, or lupus. And now there are more than 200 trials that are experimental testing CAR T cells for autoimmunity, and the results have been striking. I expect they'll be approved in the US and Europe in 2 years or less. That's how a very unusual and promising new direction from a therapy originally developed for cancer now can be reused and repurposed. And we also see this being used for autoimmune disease as well as now experimental things like infections such as HIV, and even it's been tested in COVID infection. Well, I think what the public needs to understand is that this is a new kind of therapy, and it needs to have continued research so that we, learn how to treat the other kinds of cancer where we're close but not yet across the finish line.